It was October 1945, in a farming town in Missouri whose name Marta Vogel had already forgotten. America had too many small towns with soft names, white churches, and more sky than a person knew what to do with. She had been in Camp Bellwether for 11 weeks. 11 weeks of roll calls, work details, gray barracks, and meals that were better than anything she had eaten during the final winter in Germany. The Americans gave the prisoners soap. They gave them blankets. They counted them twice a day. Marta trusted none of it. She had worked as a radio clerk near Cologne before the collapse. She had typed orders, filed reports, carried sealed envelopes through offices where men spoke in lowered voices and called obedience a virtue. She had not been important enough to command anyone. She had not been innocent enough to say she knew nothing. Now she stood at the foot of a church staircase with 7 other German women, holding a scrub brush in one hand and a bucket in the other. An American sergeant stood before them. His name was Elias Reed. He looked 31, perhaps 32. Dark hair cut short. Broad shoulders. Hands made for farm tools rather than paperwork. His uniform was clean, his boots practical, his face controlled in a way that made Marta think he had seen more than he cared to explain. "Church supper is tomorrow," he said in rough but understandable German. Storm tore part of the roof loose. Mud came in. "You'll clean the hall, stack chairs, carry wood, and wash dishes." A woman beside Marta named Greta frowned. "Why us?" Reed looked at her. "Because the church asked the camp for workers. They know who we are." "Yes." "And they still asked?" "Yes." That answer unsettled Marta more than a threat would have. The church doors opened. A heavy-set woman in a flour-dusted apron stepped out. Her hair was gray at the temples. Her expression was stern, but not cruel. "I'm Ruth Collins," she said. "The floor first. Then windows. Firewood goes in the kitchen. And do not scrub the hymn numbers off the board. Last spring someone did that, and the choir nearly lost its mind." One of the women inside laughed. Marta stared at her. There should have been a speech. A warning. A reminder that German hands were being allowed near American tables only through mercy. Instead, Ruth Collins turned and went back inside. The church smelled of wet wood, apples, dust, and something sweet cooling in the kitchen. American women moved around the prisoners with an awkward kind of normalcy. They looked, of course. Everyone looked. But no one whispered loudly. No one spat. No one called them names. A young woman brought extra rags. An old woman showed them which window stuck. A girl of about 14 asked Greta whether German soap flakes worked the same way as American ones. Greta looked at her, as if she had been asked to explain the moon. "Almost," Marta answered. The girl nodded and returned to arranging forks. For hours, Marta scrubbed. By late afternoon, the floorboards showed their pale grain again. The windows reflected the gold fields outside. The chairs had been stacked. The firewood filled the kitchen corner. And all through the work, food was being prepared. Beans simmering in large pots. Cornbread in black iron pans. Potatoes peeled into tubs. Apple pies cooling near the window. Ham wrapped in cloth. The smell made the German women quiet. Nobody at Camp Bellwether had starved. The Americans made certain of that. But this was different. This smelled like home. At 5:30, Ruth Collins clapped her hands once. "That's enough. Wash up." Marta straightened from the dish basin. "We are finished. For now." Sergeant Reed glanced toward the windows. "Truck leaves in 20 minutes. Ruth Collins looked at him. "No, it doesn't." The room stopped. Reed lowered his clipboard. "Ma'am, I said it doesn't. Not until they eat." Marta felt the words move through the room before she understood them. Extra places had already been set at the long tables. Real places. Plates. Cups. Forks. Cloth napkins folded beside them. Greta whispered, "This is not possible." Ruth Collins heard her. "It is possible. Sit down." No one moved. Reed cleared his throat softly. "Mrs. Collins, I'm not sure that's allowed." She turned toward him. "I buried one son in Italy, Sergeant. My other boy is still somewhere in the Pacific. Regulations have been eating at my table for 4 years." No one laughed. "They can wait their turn tonight." Marta looked at her carefully then. Around Ruth Collins's neck hung a small, oval photograph. A young man in uniform. Square jaw. Serious eyes. Her son. The woman walked to Marta first. "You," she said. "Sit here." Marta looked at the chair. "I cannot." "You can. We are prisoners. I know what you are." My hands washed the dishes. Ruth Collins lifted a plate. Then they are clean enough to hold a fork. Marta did not move. The room waited. A small boy appeared in the kitchen doorway, holding a wooden soldier in his hand. Behind him stood a girl with 2 braids. Ruth Collins's grandchildren, Marta guessed. My family will eat, Ruth said. But you will sit first. Marta's throat tightened. Why? Ruth Collins looked at the photograph around her neck. My boy Thomas wrote to me from Italy. He said if he made it home, he never wanted to see another hungry woman standing in a line while men argued about who deserved bread. Her hand tightened around the plate. He didn't make it home. Marta had no answer. She sat. One by one, the other German women followed. Ruth Collins served them before she served her own family. Beans, potatoes, cornbread, applesauce, a thin slice of ham. Not much. Enough. The little boy with the wooden soldier looked at the women. Grandma, he asked, are they the Germans? His mother tried to hush him. Ruth Collins did not. Yes, Henry. They are German women. Are they bad? The question was not cruel. That made it worse. Marta looked down at her plate. Ruth Collins set down the serving spoon. Some people did terrible things, she said. Some people allowed terrible things. Some were afraid. Some were proud. Some were foolish. The room remained still. But a hungry woman still needs supper. Henry thought about this. Can I have cornbread after? Yes, Ruth said. All right. That was the whole of his understanding. Across the table, Greta had not touched her food. Her face had turned pale with anger or shame. Perhaps both. Marta tried the cornbread. It was warm, coarse, slightly sweet. She had never eaten anything like it. Sergeant Reed stood near the back wall, holding his hat in both hands. Ruth Collins looked at him. You too, Sergeant. Sit or serve. He picked up the coffee pot. That was when Marta began to understand him. He did not sit above the prisoners. He did not sit beside the American families as a guest. He moved from cup to cup, pouring coffee, saying little. When he reached Marta, she covered her cup with one hand. No, thank you. He lowered the pot. You all right? No. The answer surprised them both. Marta looked toward Ruth Collins, who was cutting cornbread for the children. In my country, she said quietly, a mother whose son died would not serve enemy women before her own family. Reed looked across the hall. In my country, some wouldn't either. Then why does she? His eyes returned to Ruth Collins. Because she is Ruth Collins. Marta removed her hand from the cup. He poured coffee. After supper, the German women automatically rose to clear the tables. Ruth Collins let them. The work felt different now. Before the meal, Marta had washed dishes because she had been ordered to. Afterward, she washed them because a grieving American mother had fed her. Reed stood beside her with a towel, drying plates. You'll chip them if you stack them wet, Marta said. He looked at the plate in his hand. They're dry. The bottoms are not. He checked. They are not. Marta took the towel from him. You only dry the edges. That is not drying. I've been corrected by experts before. Not enough, apparently. Mrs. Collins passed behind them with a pot. She's right, Sergeant. Men dry dishes like they expect praise for locating the towel. The kitchen laughed. Even Greta's mouth moved once. For one brief moment, the war stood outside in the Missouri dark. Then the church door opened. A man in a dark overcoat stepped inside with 2 military policemen behind him. He introduced himself as Mr. Alden from the District Prisoner Administration Office. We received a complaint, he said. Ruth Collins folded her arms. Then I hope it was well written. Alden ignored the remark. Enemy prisoners eating with local families. Handling church property. Engaging in civilian activity beyond assigned labor. Sergeant Reed stepped forward. No unsupervised civilian contact, sir. No contraband. No private correspondence. The work detail was approved. Alden looked at the German women. These are prisoners, Sergeant. Not guests. Ruth Collins's face hardened. They are workers in my church. Alden gave her the expression of a man preparing to explain the world to a woman. Local kindness does not change their status. Marta felt the old fear rise in her. The office. The uniforms. The question meant to make a person small enough to manage. Then Ruth Collins walked to the table. She picked up a clean plate and placed it before Marta. Sit, she said. Marta froze. Alden stared at the woman. Mrs. Collins, I must object. You may do that standing. Marta still did not move. Ruth Collins looked directly at her. Sit. This time, it was not comfort. It was command. Marta sat. Ruth Collins placed cornbread on the plate. Beans. Potatoes. Ham. Then she turned to Mr. Alden. My son died fighting the German army in Italy. My younger boy is still fighting in the Pacific. I know what Germany did. I know what our boys crossed an ocean to stop. No one breathed. But if American victory means we are too afraid to feed hungry women at a table we built, then my sons fought for a smaller country than the one I raised them to love. Alden's face tightened. Regulations exist for a reason. Yes, Ruth Collins said. So does judgment. He turned to Reed. Remove the prisoners to the truck. Reed stood very still. Sir, may I speak plainly? Briefly. The prisoners were assigned here under an approved work order. They remained supervised. The church paid for their labor. No security breach occurred. Sharing a meal was not prohibited in the written instruction I received. That is a narrow reading. It is an accurate one. Ruth Collins stepped beside him. I'll sign that statement. From the back of the hall, a farmer rose. So will I. Then another. And I. A woman near the stove lifted her hand. Put my name down too. It was not a riot. It was not rebellion. It was a town standing inside its own conscience, one name at a time. Mr. Alden closed his folder. The matter will be reviewed. I expect it will, Ruth Collins said. He left without eating. The door shut behind him. For a moment, no one moved. Then Ruth Collins picked up the coffee pot. Food is getting cold. That evening, after the dishes were done, Marta found Sergeant Reed outside near the truck. Snow had begun to fall. He was writing his report against the hood, shielding the paper from the wind. You defended us, Marta said. I defended the record. That is not as romantic as you think. He looked up. I didn't know I was trying to be romantic. Marta regretted the words immediately, but he did not smile at her embarrassment. The record matters, he said. If Alden writes first, his version becomes the truth. If I write accurately, Mrs. Collins keeps her church program. Nobody gets punished for eating beans. You make decency sound like paperwork. Sometimes that's where it survives. Marta looked toward the church windows. They were taught to hate us. Some were. And yet they fed us. Reed folded the report. America is a large country. Not everyone gets it right. She looked at him. But some do. His expression softened, just slightly. Some try. In May, Marta's repatriation order arrived. On the morning she left Camp Bellwether, Reed handed her an envelope. Inside were her work credits, a conduct letter, and an address for a relief office in Würzburg. Behind the official papers was one more sheet. His address in Iowa. That is not official, she said. No. And if I don't write, then I'll assume Germany kept you busy. And if I do, for the first time, he did not look away. Then I'll answer. Years later, Marta kept two things in her desk at a rebuilt school in Würzburg. The first was Sergeant Elias Reed's conduct letter. It did not call her innocent. It did not call her forgiven. It called her reliable, accurate, and honorable in assigned duties. The second was Ruth Collins's recipe for cornbread. It never tasted quite right with German flour. But Marta kept trying. On the first Christmas after the school reopened, she arranged a meal for children with no homes to return to. A younger teacher asked why the children were served before the adults. Marta looked at the long table, at the chipped plates, at the bread divided carefully so every child would receive a piece. Because hunger waits long enough, she said. And somewhere in Iowa, beneath a white church steeple in a town with a soft name, Ruth Collins would have understood. Thank you so much for watching this story with us. If this video sparked your interest, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And if you enjoyed this video, you're going to love this next one right here. Click on the screen to watch it now.